Let's go live. Welcome everybody, it's Dan Latto speaking. Hope you're well today. Today is a Tuesday, it's 9:45 here in Spain, 9:45 in the UK. Hopefully you're all safe and staying well. So in this session I want to talk to you about whether you should be buying property or not right now. So obviously property prices are going up significantly, it would seem, and kind of wonder, is this a bit of a bubble? Are property prices then going to retract later on once the stamp duty freebie has been lifted? You don't need to pay stamp duty right now, and so it's just forcing through a lot of transactions. And obviously the answer is yes, but a bubble is something that then contracts after the event, and so is it actually going to contract or not? I have no idea. And I'm in a couple of dividend investing groups on Facebook, and they're all talking about stock prices. Is now the time to buy? And it's like, these are amateur investors, and amateur investors will always discuss where you are in the cycle. Like, they'll always try and time the market. And I know from personal experience that in trying to time the market, you invariably get it wrong. Just try trading Forex. I mean, I should give out Forex tips and you guys go and do completely the opposite. You'd all be millionaires by this afternoon. We lose so much money on Forex. We're on 10 pence a pip, and sometimes it goes great and usually it doesn't, right? But Forex is all about trying to time the market with all sorts of indicators, and invariably we get it wrong. The professionals get it wrong. Most people get it wrong. That's why you have small risk sizes, which is what we do. But we get it more wrong than we do more right. And then this also comes down to, you know, whether you can tell if somebody's lying. And the way that you can tell if someone's lying is they have a little twitch, or they lick their lips, or they're looking up and right and up and left. And it's complete and utter bollocks. And police officers can't tell if you're lying, and no one can tell if you're lying. But everyone thinks you're really good at telling lies, spotting people telling lies, and the statistics show completely the opposite. And so as humans, one of the things that we're not very good at is reading into what's actually going on in the market. And I think one of the reasons for that is that we think we've calculated all the variables that are involved in making a decision, and invariably there are more variables than we actually know about that screws up our decision making process. So how, you know, what's this got to do with property prices, and should you be buying, should you be selling, should you be holding off? How does all that affect that? So there's a couple of caveats here, of course, because there always is. The first caveat is, whereabouts are you in the cycle? And the second one is, what are you doing with the property that you're looking at buying? So do you remember, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the property doctor, Sarah Beanie, she was on, and house staging and making it look nice, and people would buy something, they'd do it up and they'd sell it. And one of my arguments back then, before we had social media, was that, look, anyone could buy, a goldfish could buy a house and it would go up in value and they would make money. What this did was it gave false positives to those people who were buying low, adding 20 grand's worth of value, and the property went up £20,000, or even worse, the property went up £30,000. I'm like, yes, look, I've made 10 grand, aren't I? Great. And actually, it was the property market that carried them up there. And then, of course, we hit 2007, 2008, and then everything crashed. I had a mate of mine who had loads and loads of properties, all off plan. He had to complete on them, and they were valued less than they were actually worth. So, you know, like the mortgage, the values were all mixed up basically. And so again, trying to time the market just doesn't work. And if you're trying to time the market, I'm afraid I think you're going to fail. And so this is the key on property, and this has been the key for me, and this is the key when you're investing in anything. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're investing, and by the way, Forex isn't investing, it's gambling. Just absolute clarity there. Oh, it's not gambling. It's educational, and we use just because you don't have to. It's gambling. It's like put 50 quid on trap 4 instead. It's gambling. You know, put 50 quid on red instead of black on roulette. It's just gambling. That's what Forex is. Binary options. Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? I don't know. One or the other. You do, oh, I've done all my calculations, it's going to go up. Oh, it went down. Oh, it's gambling, right? Investing isn't gambling. And so this is the criteria that you need to start basing some of your decision making on. So when Warren Buffett invests in a company, he's not looking at buying in at the right price. If he can, that's a bonus, but he doesn't know if it's the right price or not. He just looks to see if a share is undervalued for its price per earnings, its income, how much debt it's got. So it has got some indicators there. but he's buying a business or buying into the business for a long term. Like the guy's 83 or whatever he is, but he's still buying into Coca-Cola based on what's going to happen to Coca-Cola over the next 30 to 50 years. That's why Warren has made so much money, and his income wealth graph goes like that. And that's what yours should as well. If you're investing based on gut feel or trying to time the market, your income's going to go like this, your wealth will go like this, and eventually, unfortunately, it's going to go woof, and it's going to drop off the end of the graph because you go bust and you have to go back and get another job. And so we don't want to be investing in such a way. We don't want to be gambling. We don't want to be timing the market. Now, all of that said, and by the way, if you've got a comment, you just stick it in the box down below. All of that said, like we're in 2020, what we're in October, should you be buying right now? Prices are going up. So in context of everything I've just talked about managing risk over a longer period of time, what do you think is going to happen to property prices over the next 20 years? That's really the question. The question isn't, should I be buying now or selling now? What do you think is going to happen over property over the next 20 years? And I think invariably the answer, and disagree with me on this, if you like, you'd be wrong, but you can disagree. Invariably, prices are going to go up. And the reason prices are going to go up is because of inflation. They have to go up. The government keeps printing money. Bank of England does. It keeps printing money. The more money that goes into the marketplace, the lower the price of goods becomes relative to the cash that's put in. And that's called inflation. You know, a Mars bar that used to be 21 pence, do you remember that 20 years ago? And it's now £1.50. Not that you can get the Mars bars from 20 years ago, but you get the general idea. Or it's 90 pence. That's inflation at work. Well, what do you think is going to happen to property over a period of time? So let me just grab my pen because I can feel a graph coming. So this is one of the reasons why property is such a good investment. Okay. So what happens is, so this is time on this axis right here. So that's time, and this is cost. Let's just have a general word of cost. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So this is what happens: is you buy a house for 100, okay, and you get a mortgage of 80 grand on it. Great. So there's your £80,000 mortgage. That property price over the next, say, 20 years, what do you think is going to happen to that? Like, I think it's going to go up. It might go down, maybe. But I reckon generally, and the numbers will back me up on this, property prices increase over time. Yeah, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, but generally it goes up and down. So actually, that 100 grand, the value, I should change that word to value because that's different than the word cost. Value. This one is going to go up like that, right? This is the 20-year mark. Look at that. Now your £80,000 is still 80 grand, except it's not, because the value of a pound coin is less every year. So actually, relative value of 80 grand in 20 years' time is not 80 grand. The value of £80,000 in 20 years' time might be £64,000. On paper, it's still £80,000. When you get your mortgage statement, it says, yeah, you borrowed 80 grand. But in 20 years' time, 2040, 80 grand is not worth 80 grand because the Mars bar that was worth £1.50 is now valued at £3, right? So your money is being eroded all the time. And so the property price, and bear in mind, this 180 grand here, let's say over 20 years' time, that 180 grand is also not worth 180 grand. It is on paper. You know, when you put your property up for sale and you get the estate agent's particulars, yeah, it's £180,000. But that is also not worth £180,000 because the value of the pound is eroded over time. Relative, that might be only worth 140 because of the spending power that a pound will give you because it's eroded due to inflation. This is what nobody seems to get. Inflation, it's like, I threw my pen away and I need that. I need it later. It's like inflation is your friend, but it's only your friend on a number of reasons. Let me have a quick sip of coffee and I'll explain what those reasons are. By the way, put some questions in. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Now, by the way, I think about this all day long, and I keep coming back to this. I come back to it daily, weekly, monthly, constantly thinking about how this looks, about the portfolio. Am I doing the right thing? I've been doing that for the last 20 years, and I will continue to do that till the day that I'm absolutely sure of it. And then I have to go back to this and go, well, no, I'm on the right path. Property prices are going up generally. They might not have gone up where I live in Leeds hugely, but just recently, They have done. And what's interesting is that let me do it on the same graph. Let me do it on the same graph. Property prices in Leeds have gone like this. So we've gone about the same. And then suddenly, for some random reason that nobody would have ever guessed in a month of Sundays, COVID strikes. And then COVID strikes, and then there's a stamp duty freeze, and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be COVID, it could be aliens, it could be Trump, same thing. It could be anything. It doesn't matter what it is, right? But the marketplace will tell you that property over a long enough period of time is going to go up in value. The marketplace will simply enforce that one way or another. It doesn't matter what that is. It could be a plague of locusts. That's next year's fun, I'm sure. It could be anything, right? But then what happens? Woof, hello, it's gone up again. Now it might drop. Yeah, it might drop. But then we're here. And so actually, this point is higher than this point. And that's the way that it works. The marketplace, because of inflation, has no other choice than to make that happen. We could have a property crash tomorrow, 50% wiped off everything, okay? Let's just assume that happens, because in a marketplace, anything can happen, will happen. So at some point, there is going to be a 50% drop, will be a 75% drop, in which case people like me are going to come and start buying a whole bunch of stuff again. And we just start the whole cycle again, except this time it's generational wealth. We put it in a trust and we pass it on to kids. But this is the thing, the market will dictate what is going to happen here. But there's another aspect on your buy-to-let portfolio. So yes, property prices will increase over time. The value of your debt goes down over time. And this is the secret about inflation, is you have to own assets. If you haven't got an asset and all you're doing is working, you're going in line with the inflation. That is it. Your net worth, your value, it might sound more because a Mars bar in 50 years is £1 million. Oh, I'm a millionaire. Like, what can you afford? I can afford a Mars bar. So yeah, at some point in the future, that is what's going to happen. But that's just on paper. You need to have assets in the game. That's what's going to make you wealthy over a period of time. Now, it doesn't matter if those assets are gold, silver, deck chairs. It doesn't matter if it's property. It doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin. It doesn't matter if it's stocks and shares. It doesn't matter if it's pens or cups and mugs. You've got to have asset. You've got to have stock of something. You've got to own something. Okay. Now, obviously, pens is not a great asset. It's not income generating and it degrades over time. Mugs, probably not. Deck chairs, probably not. Don't know where I got that from. It's not a great maintenance of wealth, because it erodes over time. Luxury classic cars, 1958 Porsche or a Ferrari, let's use that one. A 1972 Ferrari is only going to go up in value, okay? I know cars will depreciate in asset, but majority of cars will depreciate in assets. Some of them aren't. Some of them increase in value. Ferraris go up in value. Crazy. And if you live in Spain, I mean, a 2001 Porsche 911 is like £25,000. That's ridiculous. You pick them up for 10 grand in the UK. It's just bizarre. Anyway, the secret to this is getting inflation busting assets. Let's just have a look. So there is a question, where to check the pulse of the marketplace and what it's doing right now. So the pulse of the marketplace is Rightmove. I'm assuming you mean in property. Like, I wrote a post on my Facebook and I put it in the mastermind group earlier, and it was talking about West Point, how rents have dropped and values have gone up. There's a flat there for 94 grand. I bought mine, I think, for 63, going back a number of years. I was frustrated because they've gone up and then they've dropped to like 60. Do you know what I mean? 65, and now we're back at 94 again, right? The value in the marketplace goes up over a period of time. The marketplace has to dictate that. But I know intimately what the rents are and what the prices are, because I look at them every month, and I look at all my properties every month, and I compare with what's coming on the marketplace, because I want to know what's happening and when. So that's how you keep your pulse on the marketplace. Unfortunately, people, they look at it once 5 years ago, and they, and then that's it. And then we're going to look at Newcastle, and they look once, and then we look at London, and we look at Birmingham. Like, I have no idea what's going on in Birmingham, and I have no idea what's going on in London. I don't invest in any of those places, so why would I? What I do, and my kids would laugh at the fact I've said do, is 48 still. Anyway, so what I do is I look at my area that I might want to buy in, and I'm looking at auction houses and I'm seeing what's coming on. And like some really cheap stuff in Bradford. You can buy a studio apartment for like £35,000 in Bradford. Like, would you? What sort of tenants are you going to get in there? Did that answer your question? My coffee's going cold, so I'm just going to finish it. Let me know. So these are property prices right here. But as you know, property prices in buy-to-let is only one side of a two-sided coin. The other aspect on this is that you've got rental prices. Now, if, and the rules are the same regardless. So the marketplace in property prices dictates that over a period of time, and we don't know how long that period of time is, but over a period of time, property prices have to go up, and they have to go up down to inflation. Okay, they have to, because we're printing money. Everything's getting more expensive. You know, inflation is what, 2%, 2.5%, 3%, whatever it happens to be. But with rents, it's exactly the same. The market will dictate what is going on. And people say, oh, rents can't go up anymore, we're already top. And that's just a ridiculous statement, an uneducated and ignorant statement, okay? And I see them all the time, and it makes me chuckle because I'm like, ha, 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 in my evil, Dr. Evil laugh. I'm like, if only you knew what happens with inflation. And inflation is the key to everything, by the way. It's just the key to everything. You know, I was doing 20 grand a year going back 20 years ago, and what was I, 27? So when I was 24, 25, I was 26. I went from 15 grand to 100 grand. Was that in 4 years, from 26 to 30? And I remember getting to 20 grand and thinking, wow, this is a lot of money. And now, of course, 20 grand's nothing, is it? It's just not enough, you know? How do people live on that? I actually ran through the numbers with my 15-year-old daughter to talk about the cost of living and look at what it actually costs to rent a flat and all the rest of it, so she can get it in her head and she knows where to aim for. But, you know, we look at these numbers now and they're tiny. Anyway, let's talk about rents. So what happens is the value today on a property might be, say, 550. Let's take one of those studio apartments in Leeds City Centre. They've now dropped, by the way, to 495. There's one property on there. Now, the thing about Rightmove, by the way, on property rentals, and you can test this yourself, is that when you see a property and it's on the market, you know, that's a bit low. Have a look at when the property was uploaded, and then phone the agent up and go, is it still available? And I guarantee this property's been rented out. They just leave it on the market, okay, so that other people can see that particular estate agent has properties, and it generates phone calls, and will say things like, no, I'm sorry, that property's gone now, but we've got another one at 550. It's just the way that they work, the cheeky bastards. So just be aware that when you see stuff online, it's usually not true, okay? We definitely live in this world, don't we, where everything is just fakery these days. It's just bizarre. Like, there are some people who are in the property training space who just lie. I saw one last month. He spends £250,000 a month on Facebook ads. Oh, really? It's funny because that seems to be more than your revenues. That's very bizarre. It's the internet. It's 2020. It's what you're supposed to do. It's the government. Look at Gove yesterday lying about when we leave the EU, our security will be much better because finally we can take control. And Theresa May was like, what? How's that supposed to work? Very funny. But Gove lies, government lies, Boris lies, everybody bloody lies, and estate agents lie when it comes to properties on the market. So let's say 550 over a period of time. This is what happens. We have inflation, okay? So why is this important? So the value of somebody earning £20,000 over 20 years, they're not going to be on £20,000, 20K for the rest of their life. If they do the same exact job, let's do it down here because I need to go up in value. If they do the exact same job, that it's going to be worth 25K. They've not got pay rises. They think they have. But all that's happened is inflation shoved that same job, same minimum wage, same whatever it is, to 25 grand. It's exactly the same. It buys the same amount of goods and services as 20 grand does, except it's 20 years on and inflation has eroded it away. Inflation, guys. Can you spot the kind of common thing here? So, what happens to this? Well, if he can afford more at 25 grand, this is what happens, okay? Let me get rid of that because I don't want to confuse you. So the 550 a month, Do you think that's going to go up in value as well? Yeah, and now it might go in line with inflation. This is where supply and demand comes in. It might go in line with inflation, but I don't think it does. And now it depends on two things. One is immigration, and the second is supply of available properties. Landlords are leaving the sector. We have 230,000 gone in the last 12 months or 24 months or whatever it is, or maybe the duration of Section 24 for 4 years. But 250,000 landlords, that's a lot of landlords leaving on a already small marketplace, right? It's like 3%, whatever it is, 5%. Like 5% of anything, it's a big amount, okay? But this 550, it generally goes like that. Now, it's not going to go to 25 grand. This is a different scale. But that's going to be worth maybe 795 in 20 years' time, which is what, a 25% increase? That's not even accurate. This is going to be worth more like 850 or 895, probably. It's like a 40% increase over the next 20 years. Absolutely. Inflation, and this number, by the way, is probably wrong. In 20 years, that is more like 45 grand. Like if you did 3% increases for 20 years and compound it, so, you know, £20,000 plus 3%, whatever that is plus 3%, whatever that is plus 3%, that's compounding, right? So this is shooting up. Now, what about your mortgage on that 80k that we talked about previously? For £80,000 right here, this is going to be, what, let's say it's £250 a month. Okay, what happens to that? Now, assuming interest rates stay the same, which is not going to happen because we know that about here, 10 years in, maybe from here, interest rates are going to start going up. Okay, but what happens? Let me do it here so it's more realistic. What happens to that 250? Well, that might be worth, you know, because interest rates have gone up. That's 395, let's say. What's the difference? £500, £250, £300. That's the difference. This is why the rich get richer, because the rich are investing. The £80,000 still stays the same. And let me just keep interest rates the same because it can be confusing otherwise, I always think. Let's just assume interest rates never change. Obviously, we know that they do, but this is it, £250. So the gap, and this is what we're talking about. This is why inflation is so important. We're talking about gaps. That's the only thing about inflation that you need to understand, gaps. 80 grand house, bought for 100, it's worth 100, it's valued at 100 today. The value of that is worth 180 grand in 20 years' time. Gap. This is what the inflation does. Inflation is like a wedge that sits inside, that fits into your asset, and it creates a gap between what you owe and what you earn. I'm going to say that again and write this down because this is probably one of the most important things you'll hear all day. Inflation is like a wedge. And when you slot it in, it separates the gap between what you owe and what you earn. And your earnings increase because of inflation, because the wedge is splitting the difference between what you earn and what you owe. This is what you owe down here. After 20 years' time, let's assume it's interest only, no repayment. Interest rates stay the same, and we know that they don't, but let's just assume it. Right here, that's the difference, 250 to 895. This is why, for me, in the last 20 years, we've been invested for 22 years now, I think it is. 26 and 48, so it's 22 years. So right here, this gap, that might take 20 years to happen. But then what happens after that? Let's move it forward a little bit. By the way, if you've got any questions about this, let me know. This is gold stuff, gold dust, by the way. Like, no one teaches this, and it drives me insane. I see people going to Happy Clappy courses, and I love Happy Clappy courses. I love them. I miss them dreadfully right now. Going in, dancing like a twat. The Happy Clappy courses I used to do were all NLP based, by the way, not property. I can't do Happy Clappy property courses. But there are a couple of people out there that are teaching stuff, and it's like, come on, guys, you need to step up your game. But what happens now is, so let's say you get to a point where you bought enough properties, and let's just say you're doing £10,000 a month, and off that 10 grand, £2,000 is your income, right? You're making, so your rent is £10,000. Let me do this better on the graph to show you, because this bit's really important, and I need you to get this bit. The other bit about inflation is important. I mean, it's all important, isn't it? Let me cover this. So your costs is £8 a month, mortgage costs, service charges, insurance, fees, electricity, council tax, mortgages, so it's £8 a month. This is your income right here. That's your rent. So that's your rent, that's your costs. You're making £2,000 a month, right? We all agreed on that. Wonderful. Over time, what happens is, over a 20-year period, this £10,000 right here, what do you think that's going to be over the next 20 years? Do you think rents might double over 20 years? Maybe. I mean, inflation alone, again, we're back to £10,000 plus 3%, plus 3% on that, plus 3% on that. Times, you do that 20 times, that'll tell you how much that's going to be if we take inflation. But as we know, rents are not going up in line with inflation, certainly not recently. The marketplace is telling us what's happening with rents, and it's going up faster than inflation. Anyway, let's say this is worth, let's just make it easy. Let's say this is worth £15,000 in 20 years' time. This is the magic that I need you to get. So this has gone up over 20 years. Before, you were making £2,000. Here, you're making £7,000 every single month. Some people get to this point and they leave the job, and then they have this £2,000, and you should never leave your job too early. Then a boiler goes, and then another boiler goes, and then suddenly we've got no money, and the whole house of cards comes crashing down. You got to watch that. But this is why you get wealthy in property, because it's all about cash flow. It's not about, oh, I'm a millionaire. It's bollocks. It doesn't make any difference. Nobody, you can't walk into McDonald's with your bank statement and go, look, I'm a millionaire. It doesn't even say it on your bank statement. It's an imaginary document, a profit, an asset and liabilities document that you've just made up on paper. There's no such things as millionaires, right? Unless you've physically got £1 million in your bank in property. And if you have got £1 million in the bank in property, what the hell are you doing with that? You're wasting 8 to 10% a year. It's costing you £100,000. Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. So the key with property is not to be a millionaire. It might sound good. It might make you feel good in some way. It might be an ego boost. I'm a millionaire. But no one can tell. And no one can tell if you're a millionaire. I mean, I went to an event in Leeds. I was visiting Leeds because I don't live there anymore. I live overseas. I was visiting Leeds, and I went to an event, and it was two brothers who were getting a lot of press, shall we say, right now, for not exactly telling the truth, which is interesting. Two brothers from London. Anyway, I went in and we were chatting. I was sat at the back. I just happened to sit next to one of the speakers. I was sat next to the speaker chair. So one guy was up and I was speaking to the other. And he's, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I've got lots of property. Oh, how much? And we don't really share how much, but got at least £1 million worth of equity, maybe two, And he's like, oh yeah, millionaire, yeah. Oh, I'm a millionaire too. And I was like, really? Like, just happened to sit next to another one. It's like, yeah, it's just complete bollocks, right? And who says that I am? What if property prices dropped 50%? Am I still a millionaire? Yesterday I might have been, but today I'm not. How does that even work? So in the story, I'm sat there in a Primark t-shirt, and my trainers, by the way, which I loved these trainers, I don't know why I loved them. They had holes in the bottom. And I got to this event, and I'm sat there at the back in my Primark t-shirt and holes in my trainers. I just thought it was very funny. But the whole millionaire thing doesn't make any difference whatsoever. What makes a difference is the difference between £2,000 a month clear and £7,000 a month clear. That's £84,000 a year. You can buy a brand new house, not a brand new house, you can buy a house every year, it's new to you, every year for the next 20 years if you wanted. And that cash flow simply adds on to this cash flow here. If you don't know where to buy an £84,000 house, go to Invest Leeds, and it's one of my companies, and we've got lots on there. And you can buy them, and all high yielding. A lot of them are tenanted. We've sold a lot in the last couple of months, obviously, and we're out dropping leaflets to get more and so. But this is the bit right here. But in order to get here, it takes time, and it takes buying properties, regardless of whether price is going up and price is going down. So if you're buying that £94,000 property and rents are £500 a month, plus you've got service charges on that, it's like £100 a month. Like, what's the return on investment? What's the yield? And yields are, dubious at best because they don't take into account service charges. One of the things that really annoyed me was Sheffield came out as the best place for buy-to-let in the UK, Sheffield city centres, because of yields. And here we are, ignorant people writing about stuff they know nothing about, and we're just talking about yields. Well, what's a yield? It doesn't mean anything. It's rent divided by how much for properties. Well, how much is the service charge? No mention of it. I've got a service charge in Leeds City Centre, 250 quid a month, which is a lot, by the way, for Leeds City Centre, on a Grade 2 listed building, very nice building. And that's about to go up even more because of all the fire regs and so on that we're all having to comply with, and some damp in a Grade 2 listed building as well. But this is the key. It's not about the yield. It's irrelevant. What's relevant is this magic number here. How much money are you going to make every single month? So when you're buying property, and the other thing I was going to say in this session was, when you're buying property, yeah, property prices are going up right now. That doesn't mean every single property on the planet, or in the UK, or in England, or in Leeds, every single property is shooting up. That's not what that means, because you've still got distressed sellers. You've still got people who are going for horrific divorces because they've been cooped up together for 6 months. And now they just want to sell the house and they just want to get out. Okay, so that 100 grand house, you can buy it for 80 grand. Yeah, you might be buying for what it was worth 6 months ago, but that's just the way it goes. The question is, what is it going to be worth in 20 years' time? The second question is, what's the cash flow from that property going to give you? If we've got access to deals that are 25% off, so 100 grand, you can buy it for 75 today, and it was worth 75 6 months ago, would I buy it? Of course, because relative to the other market that's shot up, it's still on a discount. But again, those prices are all made up. What's the value of this mug? How much is that mug worth? That mug is worth whatever someone's going to pay for it. I don't know what it was worth, 15 quid or 10 quid or whatever it happens to be. I think my coffee's going to be cold. I don't even want to risk that. So this is why you've got to stop looking and thinking about what is the right time to buy property. Is it today? Maybe it's 3 o'clock. Oh, maybe it's a week on Tuesday. Maybe that's when the price is going to be at their lowest. How the hell do you know? How does anybody know anything? Prices are just a construct of our imagination anyway. It's a tesseract, a 5-dimensional tesseract. Nobody has a clue what it is. What is 100 grand? My economics teacher, Mr. Green, Scottish man, stereotypes about Scottish people popped into my head there. So Mr. Green, Scottish people, he was my economics teacher, and he would come in every economics lesson, and he'd chuck out his money and he'd chuck it on the table, and he'd go, how much is that worth? And literally every lesson, which is probably where all this came from. I hated this guy. He thought he was really good at basketball, kicked his ass several times. He stopped playing. But he'd chuck his money on the table and he'd go, what's that worth? And you'd look at about £1.72. And it was funny, Mr. Green, because he would be talking about, he'd do cash in hand jobs, teaching kids, cash in hand, £30 an hour. So it goes in my back pocket. Our economics teacher when I was 14. You're like, okay. But he would chuck his money out. He'd go, what's that worth? And the price of that money is what it's able to buy, and that is it. So the value of a property is what someone is prepared to pay for it. And again, it's just a construct that we've made up. If you're buying it for 80 grand today and it's worth 180 grand in 20 years, what even does that mean? It doesn't mean anything, right? And so then we're talking about the value between what that gets you. The difference between 80 grand and 180 grand is not £100,000. That is an artificial construct that we as a society have made up in order to do trade, because it made it easier to buy a property with money than it did 88 donkeys and 4 sheep and 3 cows and 2 ducks. Like, that's all money is. It's just a construct used to transact. And so when we talk about property prices, so 80k here and 180k there, is an artificial construct. When we're talking about your cost of your mortgage, 250, and your rental income of 895, whatever that is, what is it? Oh, I should have just used easy numbers. I don't know why I don't use easy numbers. 850, I can do that one, so that's 600, and that's 100k. This right here, that's how much money you're going to live on. By the way, if you times that by 10, 6 grand a month, that's quite nice. Both these numbers are just artificial constructs. The key is, what does that £600 get you right now? And today, it might be 600 Mars bars. But in 20 years' time, because a Mars bar is £2, it's only 300 Mars bars. But luckily, this goes up in value as well. This goes up in value. And by the way, 3% increase on £850. This is the other key. There's a lot of keys today. 3% increase on 850 quid is a lot more than a 3% increase on £250. This is the bit that people don't seem to realise. They say rent prices can't go up any further, and they do. Let's just say they go up in line with inflation, which is great. Only inflation, that's all they're ever going to go up by. 3% on £850 versus 3% on £250. And then the next year is 3% on whatever that was, with 3% added to it. And then the next year is 3% on top of the previous year's 3%, on top of the previous year's 3%. This shoots up much higher than your costs do. This is why the wealthy get wealthier, is because it's asset-backed, it's inflation, and the poor don't have anything. They just have a job which goes up in line with inflation. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is today's session. That was a long one. Hope you enjoyed that. It's a Tuesday. It's not even supposed to be a show today, but I've not done any lives for absolutely ages. And I thought, you know what? I was in the mood, so let's just get a live out there. Anyway, hope that's useful for you. Let me know if you've got any questions over in the Facebook group. That's where we answer all our questions. And then we'll catch up with you on the next live. Hope that's useful. My name's Dan Latto. Take care.